The skies over New Terran Colony burned orange and red as the Krell ships attacked again. Commander Lisa Johnson watched from the window of Outpost Delta, her face sad in the glow of fires below. 3 months had passed since the Krell ships appeared in their star system. In that time, most of the human settlements had fallen. "Commander, we lost contact with the mining outpost on Helios," said Lieutenant Greg Barnes, his voice tired. "That's the third outpost this week." Lisa nodded, without speaking. It was always the same story. First, the communications would stop, then the survivors would arrive with tales of the bug-like Krell warriors swarming through their homes, taking prisoners and supplies. No one knew why the Krell had come, or what they wanted. Everyone just knew they were organized, cruel, and seemed impossible to stop. "What about our call for help?" she asked, turning away from the window. Greg shook his head. "No answer from Earth Command. The message system still works. But Earth might have bigger problems than just us," Lisa finished. It was the fear no one talked about. The silence from Earth could mean many things, none of them good. In the rooms below, Dr. Alan Wright moved among the hurt people, giving what little help he could with the few medical supplies left. The colony was meant to take care of itself, but not while under attack. Not with more people arriving each day as they ran from other fallen settlements. "Dr. Wright," a soft voice called. Nurse Kelly Martinez came closer, her clothes marked with someone else's blood. "The scouts are back. They say the Krell are coming this way. They'll be here by morning." Alan closed his eyes for a moment. "How many?" "Too many," Kelly answered, her voice barely a whisper. That night, as the 2 moons rose over the horizon, the remaining people gathered in the central open area. Commander Johnson stood before them, her uniform neat despite the chaos around them. "I won't lie to you," she began, her voice carrying across the quiet crowd. "Things are bad. Our defenses are failing, our supplies are low, and we've heard nothing from Earth. But we are still here. We are still fighting." A child cried somewhere in the back of the crowd, quickly hushed by a parent. Lisa felt her strength waver for just a moment before she steadied herself. "We leave at dawn. All people who aren't fighters will head for the caves in the northern hills. They should provide shelter and hiding until—" She stopped. "Until what? Until help came? Until they died of hunger instead of Krell weapons? Until we can gather again and find a way to fight back," she finished firmly. As the crowd broke up, Lisa felt someone near her. It was Alan, now wearing the same standard clothes as everyone else instead of his doctor's coat. "You're not good at lying, Commander," he said quietly. Lisa allowed herself a small, bitter smile. "Is that your doctor's opinion?" "It is. But it's also what they needed to hear." He looked up at the stars, visible through the clear dome above them. "Do you think there's anyone left out there? Anyone who might help?" Lisa followed his gaze upward. "I have to believe there is. Otherwise, what are we fighting for?" The next morning came too quickly. Lisa had not slept, instead spending the night helping organize the escape. The oldest, the youngest, and the hurt would go first, deeper into the caves where the Krell might not follow. Those who could fight would stay behind to give them time. Alan loaded the last of the medical supplies onto a small transport vehicle. "That's everything we can spare," he told Kelly. "Go with the first group, they'll need you." Kelly shook her head. "I'm staying here. You'll need help when the fighting starts." Before Alan could argue, the alarm sirens began to wail. A scout ran into the loading area out of breath. "Commander, Krell ships, at least 30 of them coming in fast." Lisa's hand went to her weapon. "How long?" "Minutes, maybe," the scout gasped. "But there's something else. There are other ships too. Not Krell. They're engaging the Krell in orbit." For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Lisa was running. For the command center, Alan and Kelly close behind her. The center was filled with people staring at the main screen, which showed the space above their planet. It was true. Krell ships were descending toward the colony, but they were under attack from another fleet. Ships with clean lines and glowing engines, moving with purpose and coordination. ships with Earth's United Forces symbol on their hulls. Are they answering our calls? Lisa demanded. The communications officer nodded, his eyes wide with disbelief. Yes, Commander, it's the 7th Fleet. They say they're here to help. A new voice came over the speakers, clear and strong. New Terran Colony, this is Colonel Sam Rivera of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress calls. Sorry we're late. We've engaged the Krell in orbit, but some of their ships are breaking through. Hold tight. Ground forces are on the way. Lisa gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white. Ground forces? How many? The first wave is already dropping, the voice replied. 300 combat-ready troops with air support, more coming soon. A cheer erupted in the command center. Some people were crying, others hugging each other in relief. Lisa felt a hand. On her shoulder, it was Alan. Looks like there was someone out there after all, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lisa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. On the screen, small dots were detaching from the Earth ships. Drop pods carrying soldiers. They streaked through the atmosphere like shooting stars, heading directly for the colony and the approaching Krell forces. Outside, the sky was changing. The orange glow of fires was joined by new lights, the flash of weapons in orbit and the bright trails of drop pods falling toward them. The ground shook as the first pods landed just outside the colony's walls. Lisa ran to the wall, Alan beside her. They watched as the pods opened, revealing soldiers in advanced combat armor. The soldiers moved with practiced skill, already forming defensive lines as the first Krell ships approached. The battle that followed was fierce. Krell warriors poured from their ships only to meet coordinated fire from the human soldiers. For the first time since the invasion began, the Krell were being pushed back. A soldier in command armor approached Lisa and Alan at the wall. His helmet visor lifted, revealing a tired but determined face. Commander Johnson? He asked. I'm Captain Patrick Harris, 87th Drop Battalion. Colonel Rivera sends his regards and says to tell you the cavalry has arrived. Lisa smiled, a real smile this time. Captain Harris, you have no idea how glad we are to see you. The ground shook again as more pods landed, bringing more soldiers, weapons, and hope to a colony that had almost lost everything. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in months, Lisa dared to believe they might win. When all hope was lost, human troops had landed and changed everything. Lieutenant Joe Miller felt his stomach drop as the dropship entered the atmosphere of New Terran Colony. Around him, 30 soldiers checked their weapons and armor with quick, practiced movements. No one spoke. They had all seen the reports and pictures of destroyed settlements. This wasn't their first battle, but it might be their most important one. 2 minutes until we land, the pilot said over the speaker. Be careful down there. We see lots of Krell around the target area. Outpost Delta is under attack. Colonel Sam Rivera stood up, holding onto a bar above him as the ship shook. Listen up, this is not a normal mission. We are here to rescue people and fight back. These colonists have been fighting alone for months without help. They are regular people and local guards. They aren't trained for this kind of attack. Paused, looking at each soldier. Our experts think the Krell want something specific on this planet. We don't know what, but it doesn't matter. Our job is to save the survivors, set up a safe area, and push the Krell back. More of our soldiers will be landing over the next 12 hours. We are just the first wave. Red warning lights began to flash. Joe checked his armor one last time, then put on his helmet. His display screen lit up, showing his health status, ammo count, and a map of the area. 30 seconds, shouted the jump master. Get ready to drop. The floor of the ship opened, showing the chaos below. Outpost Delta was clearly under attack, with Krell ships hovering over the main buildings. Some defense fire was shooting upward. Someone was still fighting. Go, go, go! The jumpmaster's voice was almost lost in the loud wind as 30 soldiers jumped into the air, using their jetpacks to control their fall. Joe felt a rush of energy as he fell toward the battle. Through his helmet, he could now see individual Krell warriors, their hard shell-like bodies shining in the light of fires burning throughout the settlement. He chose his first target, a Krell leader directing a group of warriors toward what looked like a medical building. 500 meters. 400. 300. At 200 meters, the squad's jetpacks fired at the same time, slowing their fall. Joe landed in a crouch, his rifle already aimed at his chosen target. Around him, the rest of the squad was landing in a perfect circle, creating a defensive ring. The Krell leader never saw the shot coming. It stumbled backward, green blood spraying from its chest before falling. The other Krell warriors turned, making clicking sounds with their mouth parts in what might have been surprise, only to meet coordinated fire from the human soldiers. Inside, the medical building, Alan Wright was preparing for the end. The Krell had broken through the outer defenses 20 minutes ago, and now they were working their way toward the center of the settlement where most of the survivors had gathered. He'd sent Kelly and the other medical staff ahead with the badly hurt patients, staying behind to gather what supplies he could. The sound of weapons fire outside had become constant, but suddenly the pattern changed. New sounds joined the noise. Unfamiliar weapons, shouted orders in human voices he didn't recognize. Alan moved to the window carefully. What he saw made him freeze in shock. Soldiers in advanced combat armor he'd never seen before, were fighting the Krell, and the aliens were falling back. The soldiers moved with practiced skill, their weapons cutting through the Krell with deadly effect. One of the soldiers turned toward the medical building and spotted Alan in the window. The soldier's face shield became clear, showing a human face, tired, determined, but definitely human. "Is this building secure?" the soldier shouted. Alan could only nod, speechless. "Civilian found, building secure," the soldier reported into his radio. "Doc, you better get in here, we've got wounded." Minutes later, Alan found himself working alongside a military doctor, treating colonists and soldiers alike as the battle for Outpost Delta raged around them. "Where did you come from?" Alan finally managed to ask as they treated a colonist with a severe burn. The military doctor, her name tag read Morales, didn't look up from her work. "Earth about 3 weeks ago. We've been pushing our engines beyond safe limits to get here. But the distress call only went out. We picked up the first distress calls months ago." She interrupted. "It took time to gather the fleet. Too much time." Her hand stopped for a moment. "I'm sorry we couldn't get here sooner." Outside, the tide of battle was turning. More dropships were landing, bringing heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and hundreds more soldiers. The Krell, facing unexpected and overwhelming resistance, began to retreat. In the command center, Lisa Johnson watched in stunned silence as Colonel Rivera explained the situation. "Earth hasn't abandoned you," he said firmly. "The Krell attacked 3 other colony systems before reaching yours. We've been fighting them for months, but they're attacking too many places at once for us to respond everywhere immediately." "Why here?" Lisa asked. "Why did they attack us so hard?" Rivera turned on a display showing a planet scan. "That's what we're here to find out. But first we secure this colony and prepare for their counterattack. The Krell will be back and with more forces." This was just their advance group. For the first time in months, Lisa felt something other than despair. The colony might still fall. They might all still die, but they were no longer alone. As night fell, the immediate battle was over. The Krell had retreated to the mountains, but everyone knew they would return. The Earth forces worked quickly to strengthen the colony's defenses, setting up shield, generators, and weapon emplacements around the perimeter. Lisa stood with Rivera on the observation deck, watching as more ships descended from orbit, bringing supplies, weapons, and reinforcements. "Why did it take so long?" she asked quietly. "We thought Earth had forgotten us." Rivera's face darkened. "The Krell hit us hard and fast. They attacked multiple systems at once, forcing us to spread our defenses thin. It took time to organize a proper counteroffensive." He looked at her. "But we never forgot you." Not for a moment. A soldier approached them, saluting. "Colonel, the perimeter is secure. The medical teams report all critical cases are stabilized. Engineering teams have restored power to the eastern sector." "Good work, Lieutenant Miller." Rivera nodded. "What about our long-range sensors?" "Up and running, sir," Joe reported. "We're tracking Krell movements in the mountains. They seem to be regrouping around some kind of structure about 30 kilometers north." Lisa frowned. There's nothing out there except some old caves. We mapped them when we first arrived, but they didn't seem important. Rivera and Joe exchanged a glance. Perhaps they're more important than you realized, Rivera said. Lieutenant, organize a recon team. I want eyes on that structure by morning. Yes, sir. Joe saluted again and left. In the medical center, Kelly was helping Dr. Morales organize supplies. The Earthships had brought advanced medical equipment and medicines that the colonists hadn't seen in months. Your doctor, right, is it? He did remarkable work with what he had, Dr. Morales commented as she reviewed patient files. These people should have died from these injuries, but he kept them alive. Kelly smiled with pride. Alan is the best doctor I've ever worked with. He refused to give up on anyone even when we ran out of almost everything. Morales nodded with respect. That kind of determination is what wins wars. Outside, the night was alive with activity as soldiers and colonists worked side by side to strengthen defenses, repair buildings, and prepare for what everyone knew was coming. The Krell wouldn't accept this defeat easily. They would return, and in greater numbers. But for tonight, at least, there was hope. When all seemed lost, human troops had landed, and everything had changed. Sergeant Frank Carter adjusted his grip on his pulse rifle as he scanned the area through his helmet's special vision system. 3 weeks had passed since the first landing, and Outpost Delta had changed from a colony about to be destroyed to a military base with strong defenses. The Krell had moved back to the mountains after the surprise of the human reinforcements, but everyone knew they were regrouping. Movement, Section 7, reported Private Dana Lewis from her position 10 meters to his right. Looks like a scout drone. Frank zoomed in on the area she had marked. Sure enough, a small Krell flying device was hovering at the edge of their sensor area, its cameras scanning the human defenses. Control Outpost 5, Frank said into his radio. Krell scout drone at Section 7, Grid 3419. Can we shoot it down? The answer came right away from the operations center. No, Outpost 5, let it gather its information. Operation Flytrap is in effect. Frank acknowledged the order, though it went against his instincts to let an enemy scout complete its mission. But he understood the plan. Colonel Rivera and Commander Johnson had created a plan to feed the Krell false information about human defenses and troop movements. The drone would report back exactly what they wanted the Krell to see. Inside the main colony building, now serving as joint military-civilian headquarters, a different kind of battle was being fought. Lisa Johnson stood beside Colonel Rivera as they faced screens showing representatives from the surviving settlements across the planet. The evacuation of civilians to Earth cannot begin until we've secured the space around the planet, Rivera was explaining. The Krell still have ships in orbit that would attack any civilian transports. So we're trapped here? Asked an older man representing the farming settlement at New Eden Valley. Not trapped, Mayor Rogers, Lisa cut in. Protected. For the first time since the invasion began, we have a chance to fight back. But Colonel Rivera is right. Any large-scale evacuation now would just give the Krell easy targets. The discussion continued, with the settlement representatives eventually agreeing to the military's plan. As the screens went dark one by one, Lisa let out a long breath. That went better than expected, she said. Rivera nodded, his face serious. They understand what's at stake. But understanding and accepting are different things. He turned to the central display showing the planet and the space around it. The real question is what the Krell are waiting for. They've had time to bring in reinforcements, yet they've held back. Lisa studied the display. Dr. Wright and the science team might have an answer for that. They've been studying the data from the recovered Krell technology. In the repurposed science labs, Alan Wright and a team of military scientists were doing exactly that. Pieces of Krell technology, weapons, communication devices, and fragments of their ships were spread across multiple workstations. The design is incredibly advanced, Alan was explaining to Captain Olivia Bennett, the fleet's chief alien technology specialist. But what's most interesting is this pattern in their communications. He brought up a series of wave patterns on a display. We've detected these signals being sent from the largest Krell ship in orbit to somewhere deep beneath the planet's surface. Captain Bennett studied the wave patterns with narrowed eyes. These aren't battle communications, this is something else. Almost like a conversation. That's what I thought, Alan agreed. They're talking to something, or someone. In the former colony cafeteria, now serving as the main gathering place for off-duty soldiers and colonists, bonds were forming between the two groups. Marine Corporal Eric Wade found himself sitting across from Kelly Martinez, the colony nurse who had stayed behind during the worst of the siege to care for the wounded. "So you were really planning to make your last stand in the medical center?" Eric asked, impressed despite himself. He'd seen battle on 3 worlds now, but the courage of these civilians continued to amaze him. Kelly shrugged, though the memory clearly still affected her. "It wasn't bravery. We just didn't have anywhere else to go, and people needed help." She looked up at him. "What about you? You volunteered for a mission that was considered a long shot at best, from what I've heard." Eric thought about his answer carefully. "The Krell hit my home colony first," he said finally. "Dawn's Light, in the Procyon system. I was off-world when it happened. But my family..." He stopped talking, then straightened his shoulders. "Let's just say it wasn't a hard decision to make." Kelly reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "I'm sorry about your family, and thank you for coming here, for fighting for us when we thought no one would." Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden wail of alarm sirens. The colony's announcement system crackled to life with Colonel Rivera's voice. "All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to battle stations." Eric was on his feet instantly, already reaching for his gear. "Get to the shelters," he told Kelly as other soldiers around them rushed to respond to the alert. "Not a chance," she replied, standing as well. "The medical center will need all hands." As they parted ways, the ground beneath their feet shook with the first impacts of renewed Krell bombardment. The second phase of the battle for New Terran colony had begun. In the command center, Rivera and Lisa were studying the tactical display as reports flooded in. "The Krell are attacking in waves," reported the tactical officer. 3 main assault groups, coming from the mountains to the north, east, and west. "What about our scout teams?" Lisa asked, thinking of the reconnaissance units they had sent into the mountains days earlier. "Team Alpha is reporting in," the communications officer announced. "They found something in the northern range, some kind of structure built into the mountain itself. Not Krell design, it looks much older." Rivera's head snapped up. "Show me." The main screen changed to show a video feed from the scout team. The image showed what appeared to be an entrance carved into the mountainside, with strange symbols etched around its edges. The symbols glowed with a faint blue light. "The Krell are trying to reach it," came the voice of the scout team leader. "They've been digging into the mountain from multiple points. Whatever this is, they want it badly." Rivera turned to Lisa. "That's it. That's why they came to this planet. Not for the colony, not for resources, for whatever is in that mountain." Lisa stared at the screen. "But what is it? Who built it?" "I don't know," Rivera admitted, "but I intend to find out before the Krell do." He turned to his officers. "Prepare a strike team. Our objective is to secure that structure. This is now our primary mission." As the command center burst into activity, Lisa found herself looking at the strange symbols on the screen. Something about them seemed almost familiar, though she knew she had never seen them before. Outside, the battle raged as Krell forces pushed toward the colony. But this time, the humans were ready. Defense turrets opened fire, cutting down the first wave of attackers. Armored vehicles moved into position, their heavy weapons adding to the defensive fire. In the sky, Earth fighter craft engaged Krell aerial units. The war for New Terran colony, and perhaps for the mysterious structure in the mountains, had entered a new phase, and neither side was willing to back down. Captain Natalie Foster led her squad through the dark tunnel, their path lit only by the soft blue glow of their lights. The cave system went for many miles beneath the northern mountains, much deeper than any colony survey had ever explored. Until now, no one had any reason to go this far down. The Krell had changed that. For 2 months, the human forces had held their ground at the colony, fighting off increasingly desperate Krell attacks. Then, 3 days ago, Something strange had happened. The Krell had suddenly pulled back completely, leaving positions they had fought hard to keep, retreating not to space but deeper into the planet's wilderness. Colonel Rivera had ordered search teams to track their movements, and all trails had led here, to these ancient tunnels. "Signal's getting stronger," reported Specialist Jake Morris, checking the handheld sensor. "Whatever tech they're using, it's putting out a lot of power, about 200 meters ahead." Natalie signaled for the squad to tighten formation. "Stay alert. This could be a trap." She turned on her radio. "Base, this is Deep Recon 1. We're approaching the signal source. No sign of Krell forces yet, but the tunnels show signs of recent activity." Lisa Johnson's voice came through clearly despite the rock between them and the surface. "Understood, Deep Recon. Dr. Wright is watching your video feed. He says the energy signature is unlike anything in the Krell arsenal we've seen so far." "Copy that," Natalie replied. She motioned the squad forward, her own weapon ready. The tunnel suddenly widened, opening into a vast chamber that their lights couldn't fully illuminate. The squad spread out carefully, sweeping their beams across the "Space Captain," called Private Ryan Scott from several meters ahead. "You need to see this." Natalie moved to his position, and what she saw made her catch her breath. The chamber floor dropped away into a perfect circle, at least 50 meters across. Within this pit, a structure rose, not Krell architecture with its organic, shell-like forms, but something else entirely. Geometric, precise, with surfaces that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. "What am I looking at, Doc?" Natalie asked over the radio, knowing Wright would be seeing the same view through her helmet camera. There was a long pause before his voice came through, tight with excitement and worry. "I'm not entirely sure, but based on the design elements, I don't think the Krell built this. It appears to be much older." "How much older?" "First analysis suggests the materials are at least 50,000 years old, possibly much more." Private Scott let out a low whistle. "That's older than human civilization. And likely Krell civilization as well," added Dr. Wright through the radio. Natalie ordered the squad to set up a defensive perimeter while she and Specialist Morris approached the structure. As they got closer, they could make out details on its surface, complex patterns that seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. "There's an opening," Morris noted, pointing to what appeared to be an entrance on the near side of the structure. Before Natalie could respond, their sensors came alive with warnings. "Multiple contacts," shouted Sergeant Kevin Jones from his position at the chamber entrance. "Krell signatures, moving fast through the tunnels. They're heading right for us." "How many?" Natalie demanded, already signaling the squad to defensive positions. "Too many," Jones replied grimly. "At least 50, maybe more." Natalie made a quick decision. "Base, we've found some kind of ancient structure that the Krell are very interested in. We have incoming hostiles, greatly outnumbered. Request immediate reinforcement and advice on priorities." Colonel Rivera's voice replaced Lisa's on the radio. "Priority is to secure that structure, Captain. Whatever it is, it's the reason the Krell came to this planet. Reinforcements are on the way, ETA 15 minutes. Hold your position as long as possible." "Understood, sir," Natalie acknowledged, though she knew 15 minutes might be longer than they had. "Morris, with me. We're going inside. The rest of you, defensive formation at the chamber entrance, make them work for every meter." As the squad moved to follow her orders, Natalie and Morris approached the structure's entrance. Up close, the patterns on its surface seemed almost to pulse with an inner light, though it cast no illumination. "What do you think it is?" Morris asked quietly as they reached the entrance. "I don't know," Natalie admitted. "But it's about to become the most valuable real estate on this planet." They stepped through the entrance and into impossibility. The interior was larger than the exterior dimensions should have allowed. AI, vast space filled with technology unlike anything human or Krell. At the center stood what could only be described as a control platform, glowing with the same subtle, shifting patterns as the exterior. "Base," Natalie reported, her professional tone barely hiding her awe. "We're inside. It's some kind of alien facility. Definitely not Krell, much more advanced." From the chamber entrance came the sound of weapons fire. The Krell had arrived. Morris moved to the central platform, his sensor unit scanning frantically. "Captain, this technology is still active. It's been in standby mode for thousands of years, but it's fully functional. Can you figure out what it does?" Natalie asked, dividing her attention between the marvels around them and the battle beginning outside. Morris studied the readings, then looked up with wide eyes. "It's a weapons system, Captain. The most powerful weapons system I've ever seen. And if I'm reading this correctly, it's designed to target specific genetic markers." The implications hit Natalie like a physical blow. "The Krell. It targets the Krell specifically." "That's my guess," Morris nodded, "which explains why they're so desperate to capture or destroy it." Over the radio, they could hear the sounds of fierce combat as the squad engaged the Krell forces. "We're being overrun," Sergeant Jones shouted. "Cannot hold position much longer." Natalie made her decision. "Morris, figure out how to activate this thing. I'm going to help the squad." As she turned to leave, Morris called after her. "Captain, if I activate this without fully understanding it, it could affect the entire planet, maybe the entire system." Natalie paused at the entrance. "Understood. But if we don't hold off the Krell until reinforcements arrive, it won't matter either way." She rejoined her squad just as the first wave of Krell warriors poured into the chamber. The battle that followed was desperate and brutal. Humans fighting with the knowledge that they were the only line of defense protecting a discovery that could change the course of the war. Meanwhile, in the colony, Colonel Rivera was personally leading the reinforcement team. "All available combat units prepare for immediate deployment," he ordered over the command center speakers. "Priority mission to the northern mountains. Captain Foster's team has made contact with the primary objective." Lisa Johnson approached him as he was checking his equipment. "I'm coming with you," she said. Rivera looked like he was about to object, but something in her expression stopped him. "This is your planet," he acknowledged. "You should be there for this." They departed, with 4 heavily armed transport ships, flying low over the landscape toward the mountain coordinates. In the lead ship, Alan Wright sat beside Lisa, his medical kit ready. "Do you think this is it?" Lisa asked him quietly. "The reason they came here?" Alan nodded. "The signals we intercepted, the Krell's behavior patterns, it all points to something they desperately want or desperately fear. Maybe both." The ships landed at the cave entrance and Rivera led the force inside at a run. They could hear the echoes of battle from deep within the mountain. When they finally reached the chamber, they found Captain Foster's squad still fighting, though reduced to half their original number. The Krell, remarkably, were retreating. "Report, Captain," Rivera demanded as his forces secured the chamber. Natalie, bleeding from a wound in her side but still standing, gestured toward the alien structure. "Sir, we've found what the Krell came here for, and I think we've just discovered how to win this war." Inside the structure, Morris had activated a portion of the ancient system. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps, Krell biological data, and weapons schematics. "It's called the Sentinel," Morris explained as the others entered. "Built by a species that called themselves the Predecessors. They fought the Krell thousands of years ago and created this network of weapons to stop them." Lisa stared at the displays in wonder. "And it's been here all this time? Under our colony?" "Waiting," Alan said softly. "Waiting for someone to find it when the Krell returned." As the implications sank in, Rivera turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to Fleet Command. Tell them we found something that changes everything." The battle in space was visible even from the ground, flashes of light in the night sky as Earth's fleet fought the Krell ships. 2 months had passed since the discovery of the alien facility, what scientists now called the Sentinel, and everything had changed. Commander Lisa Johnson stood on the rebuilt observation deck of Outpost Delta, watching the battle alongside Colonel Rivera. The colony below them was busy with activity, very different from the desperate last stand she had been preparing before the human troops arrived. The Krell are pulling back, Rivera noted, studying the battle display. Third Fleet is moving to cut off their escape route. Lisa nodded, still not fully used to humans having the advantage. All because of what we found here. Who would have thought our colony would be the key to everything? The discovery of the Sentinel had revealed a surprising truth. The Krell were not the first hostile species to threaten this region of space. Long ago, another civilization had faced them and created a weapon specifically to target Krell biology. The facility beneath the mountains was one of several placed throughout the galaxy, lying dormant until needed again. When activated, the Sentinel had done more than just provide a weapon. It had unlocked a vast store of knowledge about the Krell, their body structures, their technology, their weaknesses, information that Earth scientists and military planners had spent the last 2 months putting to good use. Incoming message from the flagship, announced the communications officer. The main display changed to show Admiral Diane Russell, commander of Earth's fleet. "Colonel Commander," she greeted them. "I'm pleased to report that the Krell fleet is in full retreat. The modified phase cannons are performing better than expected. The Krell ships can't withstand our coordinated fire." "Any word from the other battlefronts, Admiral?" Rivera asked. "The news is good across all areas," Russell confirmed. "The Procyon system has been completely freed. Tau Ceti and Altair are reporting similar successes. For the first time since this war began, we're winning." As the transmission ended, Lisa felt a mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also lasting sadness for all that had been lost. "It doesn't bring back the settlements we lost," she said quietly. "All those people." Rivera placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. "No, it doesn't. But it means their sacrifice wasn't in vain, and it means we can start rebuilding. Below them, in what had once been the colony's main plaza and was now a combined military and civilian operations center, Dr. Alan Wright and Specialist Morris were working with a team of scientists who had arrived from Earth. The plaza was filled, with holographic displays showing data streaming from the Sentinel. "The translation programs are improving," Morris was explaining to a newly arrived language expert. "We've decoded about 60% of the Sentinel's database. What we're learning is extraordinary," Alan added. "The civilization that built these devices, they called themselves the predecessors. They mapped hundreds of habitable worlds throughout this arm of the galaxy, worlds that could become new colonies for Earth." The language expert, Dr. Pamela Hayes, looked up from the data with wonder. "They left all this for us? Why?" Alan shook his head. "Not for us specifically. For whoever came after them and faced the Krell. They left these Sentinels as guardians, I suppose, ensuring that life could continue to evolve and thrive. And we activated it just in time," Morris said. "Another few days and the Krell would have destroyed it." In the medical center, now expanded and modernized with equipment from Earth, Kelly Martinez moved among the patients with practiced efficiency. Most were recovering now, their critical phase past. She stopped at the bed of Corporal Eric Wade, who had been severely injured during the defense of the Sentinel. "How's our hero today?" she asked, checking his vital signs. Eric grimaced, though whether from pain or embarrassment at the label was hard to tell. "I'm no hero. I was just in the right place at the wrong time." "That's not how Captain Foster tells it," Kelly replied, adjusting his medication. "She says you held the line when everyone else was falling back, that you gave them the time they needed." Eric looked away. "A lot of good people died down there." "Yes," Kelly agreed softly. "And a lot more would have died everywhere if you hadn't helped protect the Sentinel." She finished her checks and met his eyes. "The first civilian transports are leaving for Earth next week, but some of us are staying to rebuild, to make something new here. Something worth fighting for," Eric said, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. On the far side of the settlement, at the edge of what would soon become a new residential area, Sergeant Frank Carter and Lieutenant Joe Miller stood watching, as construction drones laid the foundations for permanent structures. Hard to believe we're planning for peace already, Frank commented. Feels like we've been at war forever. Joe nodded, his expression thoughtful. Not over yet. The Krell are retreating, but they're still out there. And who knows what else is waiting for us among the stars. That's cheerful, Frank said dryly. Joe shrugged. Just being realistic. But for what it's worth. He gestured toward the construction site. I think we proved something here. Not just about fighting, but about enduring. About not giving up even when all hope seems lost. Frank considered this, then nodded slowly. The colonists held out against impossible odds. We showed up just in time to help them finish the job. And changed everything. Joe finished quietly. Captain Natalie Foster stood at the entrance to the Sentinel, now surrounded by a research base built by Earth's scientists. The strange symbols on its surface had become familiar to her over the past months as she led security for the research operation. Thinking deep thoughts, Captain? Asked Dr. Wright as he approached. Natalie smiled slightly, just wondering what the predecessors would think of us using their technology. If they'd approve. I think they would, Alan replied. They built these sentinels to preserve life in the galaxy. That's what we're doing too. By winning a war. By preventing extinction, Alan corrected gently. Sometimes that requires fighting. As night fell completely, the lights of the colony glowed warm and inviting against the darkness. Above, the last flashes of battle faded as the Krell ships jumped to hyperspace, fleeing a world that had nearly been their conquest, but had instead become the beginning of their defeat. Commander Lisa Johnson, watching from the observation deck, allowed herself to truly hope for the first time in months. The war wasn't over. The rebuilding had barely begun. But humanity had found its footing among the stars, discovered allies from the distant past, and proven that even in the darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, the tide could turn. All it had taken was the courage to keep fighting, and the arrival of those who refused to let them fight alone. Later that evening, Lisa stood with Alan, Rivera, and Captain Foster in the newly constructed memorial garden. A simple stone monument had been erected, bearing the names of all those lost during the Krell invasion and the subsequent battles. They would be proud, Alan said, looking at the names. To know their sacrifice meant something. Lisa nodded, touching the cool stone gently. When the Krell first came, I thought we were finished. That humanity would just be another species they wiped out. She looked up at the stars, now peaceful again. I never imagined we'd be the ones to stop them. Not just stop them, Rivera added. Drive them back, all the way to their home systems. The knowledge from the Sentinel is already being shared with other human colonies and our allies. What happens now? Natalie asked. Lisa looked around at the growing colony, at the mix of military personnel and civilians working together to build something new. Now we rebuild, we learn, we prepare. She smiled, a real smile without the shadow of fear for the first time in many months. And we remember that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope. As they walked back toward the main settlement, the twin moons rose over the horizon, their light shining down on a world that had faced extinction and survived. A world where, when all hope was lost, human troops had landed and changed everything.